Hi kids, this is your captain speaking. We're going to go through your homework for Monday in this little video, and this is an experiment. I'm just going to point out what I think is important in the texts, hopefully to help your reading. You will also read it on your own, but this is a sort of an audio guide, hopefully helping you to get a little more knowledge about this text than you might get on your own. But first, let's start with a joke. Two blondes fell down a hole, and one blonde said to the other, "Geez, it's dark down here, isn't it?" And the other one said, "I don't know, I can't see." Okay, that was, yeah. Okay, we'll start here with the Literature of Change by Christopher McKitterick, which is about science fiction, and you may notice a word here, etymological, that you don't know. Etymology is the study of language, and so it's about what science fiction means in the study of language. And as it says, it's literature about scientific discovery or technological change, but the text quite quickly makes clear that this is not a sufficient definition. It is not all just about scientific discovery or technological change. It is more accurate to say that it is literature of change, which is the true essence of science fiction. So science fiction is about something new, something different, something that doesn't exist in the world as we know it. And it goes on to say that Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is the first true scientific novel, science fiction novel. I assume you know Frankenstein, the novel of a scientist creating a new human sewn together from bodies, and it's about asking a question, like all true science fiction literature, that is, if we had technology to reanimate the dead, should we use it? And in a wider sense, the Frankenstein is also a story about what happens when man plays God, because only God is supposed to create life. So what happens when man creates life? That is Frankenstein, and that is very much the definition of science fiction, asking these questions about man's place in the universe. And the next session here is just about what else science fiction can do. I think you can read that on your own. And then there's an important point here about science fiction being a major force at the box office. That means science fiction films are nowadays more popular than science fiction stories, or written stories at least. Science fiction is now a film genre as much as anything, and that's where most people get into contact with science fiction. There's been many different kinds of science fiction films, from the universally popular ones like Star Wars, which are what you might call popcorn films, and then the darker, more high art things like Space Odyssey 2011. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just listen to this dun, 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 dun. That melody, in fact by Richard Wagner, but is the sort of thing that everyone associates with Space Odyssey 2011. Anyway, that's more as a history of science fiction, and I think you can read the rest of it on your own. The second document that we're going to be working with is this Planet Ivy, Science Fiction Ignore Its Preachings at Your Own Peril, which is slightly funnier, more interesting text, and it talks about how science fiction is a way to get across points, to preach, as it is, to normal people without seeming boring. That is, if you want to bring a point across to the teenagers of today, you don't go to a church and stand on the pulpit talking like a preacher. No, you try to say something in an entertaining way with a film, and that is what science fiction is good at, bringing a message across to young people, to hopefully teach them something of the world. It makes a comparison here to fantasy, saying that science fiction is a better genre for bringing across a message than fantasy, because you know, Gandalf, he couldn't complain about the overpopulation of Middle Earth in a manner that made sense. It would be silly. In my opinion, it's a horrible example, because Middle Earth, The Lord of the Rings, is a story that is very much about war and technological progress. If you've watched the films or read the books, you'll know that the orcs have got gunpowder and they use it to sort of destroy the world. So in fact, fantasy, just like science fiction, can comment on the world and on serious issues, but what fantasy cannot comment on is the future, and that is what science fiction can comment on. Fantasy can only be a parable, that is a metaphor for life as it is today or life as it was in the past. Science fiction can talk about possible life in the future, and I think that's a distinction that this paper fails to make, but you should make in your own minds. Science fiction is about change in the future, and fantasy is about the past, but it can also reflect the world of today, as can science fiction. That is where they overlap. Okay, the next part here is about how science fiction has a stigma attached to it. A stigma means that it's you know, considered to be something for nerds, and that's certainly true, probably more true than when I was a young man than it is today, because science fiction is so popular in terms of movies. But reading science fiction stories, has always been sort of a geeky activity for young men who have no control over their hair or general hygiene, which is the best kind of young man anyway. Girls, in case you're wondering, guys who are in control of their hair, they're really not worth it in the long run. That's just a personal comment. All right, but the point here in the text is that even though science fiction is for nerds, it's very intelligent, and it gives various examples from current science fiction, like Elysium, which is about the polarization between rich and poor in the current world, with rich getting richer, poor getting poorer, and what will that lead to in the future? That's what the movie asks. Basically, the movie is about a floating city where all the rich people have gone up to live in a floating city above the earth. As far as I know, I haven't watched it, and the poor people are stuck down on the surface in a sort of hell. And he gives several examples like that. Avatar is another example where you have it's about the environment, but it's just told with giant 3D Smurfs, and it has the subtlety of a gymnast with an erection, is the very, very apt description that he uses. And then he ends up saying that, you know, Hollywood understands that you don't want to be preached to when you go to the cinema. Going to the cinema shouldn't be like talking to your dad, telling you what's right and what's wrong about the world. It should be entertaining, but Hollywood still tries to bring across a message in an entertaining fashion, and that's what science fiction does. We understand that we don't want the world to be taken over by Terminators, it says here, so don't rely on technology. That's the message. If you rely on technology, Arnold Schwarzenegger will fuck you up, and who wants to be fucked up by Arnold Schwarzenegger? Goodbye iPhone, you know, don't rely on your iPhone. That's the message that a movie like Terminator brings, and so in even very simple action movies like Terminator can have a central message. What I would like to think about here is the movie that we've watched, and we're going to finish watching on Monday, The Minority Report. That movie is also sending out a message about the world we live in now, taken to extremes in the future. There's the whole ID, and ID spelled like this, identify. Here, there you go, that people, everywhere they go, they will be tracked according to, their eyes will be scanned and they will be tracked. Consider, for instance, your IC card, your travel card, which similarly, though in a much more mundane fashion, scans everywhere you go. The police could, in theory, know everywhere you go by tracking your IC card or your Visa card, and so on and so forth. And there are cameras up all over the world, surveillance is the theme of the Minority Report. It also, similarly to Frankenstein, asks the question, if we could do something, what would happen? Frankenstein is if we could create life from dead matter, what would happen to us? And in the Minority Report, of course, it's if we could predict crimes, should we prevent them? And that's my little talk. I hope that it helped you understand what we're going to use this text for. It's an experiment, and I'm probably going to get better at this as we go along. Thank you very much for listening, and have a good evening.